Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's session with CADTALK and WIA Systems. Today we're talking about solving ETO the right way, designing ERP solutions that work from day one. I'm your moderator, John Thomas. We're going to give everyone just a minute or two to trickle in. We are just past 11 o'clock Eastern, so we will give everyone another minute or so to check in. We'll have Tim Ryan and Dylan Olson on here in just a moment. Yeah, just hang tight with us, and we'll start in just about 1 minute. All right, again, thank you to everyone who has joined today. We'll go ahead and get started with our presentation today, our webinar on solving ETO the right way. As Veronica mentioned in the chat there, if you do have any questions as the conversation goes forward, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A as we go. If there's space to answer them as we're going about the presentation, we're more than happy to go ahead and get those answered. We will have some time for our questions at the end, expecting about a 35 to 45-minute presentation, and then leaving some time for questions at the end if those come in as necessary. So we'll go ahead and introduce our panel today. I'm lucky to have a couple of folks who live this every day with our engineer to order projects and kind of how to get ahead of that. We have Dylan Olson, who's a solutions architect here at CADTALK. He's the one in the room when an engineering team's data isn't doing what it should. So Dylan has lived a lot of this here with CADTALK and at other companies as well. Dylan is here audio only. Dylan, I'll let you talk here in just a minute, but Dylan has an extenuating circumstance where he tried to log on to his Wi-Fi about 10 minutes ago, and his Wi-Fi is down. So you're on your neighbor's Wi-Fi. Is that correct, Dylan?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. See, Dylan makes things happen.
No
matter what arises, Dylan solves problems, and so that problem is knowing your neighbor's Wi-Fi password. So thank you, Dylan.
The power dropped in my house.
Yes, had a power outage at Dylan's house. So thank you, Dylan, for powering through. I appreciate that. And then Tim Ryan's an ERP sales executive at WIA. He's focused on construction, engineering, and fabrication. So Dylan, I'll let you say a quick hello. But Tim, what kinds of shops are you spending your days with at WIA?
So I run our North American construction ECI, as IFS calls it, but I'm centered around our IFS practice. We sell a construction solution at WIA, everywhere from lead gen all the way through to delivery, and we're one of the best with delivery. And delivery starts with making sure the client expectations are set from the very beginning, and making sure that the solution is solid from solution architecture all the way through.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, Tim has been on a lot of projects with us with CADTALK, and so very familiar with this. So we're really excited to kind of talk through some of these patterns here that we see with ETO and moving forward here. So let's talk about why we're here today. There's this pattern that we see with most ERP conversations, and then I'll turn it over to Tim here in just a moment to expand on this. But an ERP conversation runs discovery, implementation, and then go live. It looks very clean on paper. But in there, the CAD workflows, the bill of material handoffs, the weeks it takes to do what should take minutes, none of that part makes the agenda until it's a problem, and then you're going backwards. So, Tim, you've sat across the table from a lot of ETO shops. You mentioned a lot of construction folks. When you walk in, what's the first sign that tells you this handoff's going to be an issue later? And what does this pain sound like whenever you're assessing a project here?
A lot of times with IFS specifically, when we're having these conversations, if we're talking to somebody who does fabrication, that would be a project-based, usually if I'm talking to them, but that could be any of our manufacturing clients as well. But if they're doing configure to order or engineer to order where a CAD model is involved, you can't really know in real time for your customers what that's going to cost until you have a bill of materials. IFS has a very robust way of structuring different types of bills of materials, different flavors of that. So that way you can get quotes, you can manage your suppliers. All of that links from being able to get that CAD model into a bill of materials as quickly as possible. And you can perform better for your clients and get better cost models and revenue models and margin. And it helps with the change process as well. So we like to ask those questions when we're first having those conversations with clients in discovery, and make sure that if something like CADTALK is required, that it is part of the conversation and part of the sales process as well.
So I do want to dive into a little bit more about how you all build deals by first looking at how most deals get built. So we talked about this for just a moment. There's that discovery process, so understanding the needs and constraints, and then you're making that ERP selection. So whether that's IFS competing against others, you're choosing that core system and their vendor, and then there's implementation. You deploy the system, you get the ERP in place, and then a solution like CADTALK appears later. So by the time CADTALK enters the conversation, the deal is already shaped. But from what you were talking about there, Tim, this looks a little bit different. So walk us through, if you're building this deal, how are you going about it?
Yeah, so like I said, in the discovery, I mean, not to go through all of that, but we like to have business conversations first. Let's find out what the mission critical issues are. Let's also find out all the nice to haves, and then all of those things can have dependency. So because I'm in construction, in construction specifically, the way that I structure my discoveries, it's everything touches everything, right? So you know, labor, materials, everything touches everything. So you've got to understand those dependencies. So we just start with a business conversation, not necessarily a product conversation, if that makes sense. But one of the things that I've learned in my career is that even as robust as IFS is, there is not an ERP on the market that can do everything on its own. So it needs to have the proper ISVs or the proper integrations to current product that the client has. We need to have those conversations, and we need to talk about what that's going to look like. And we can't really build the demonstration or talk about that solution until we understand all of those things. So from discovery, we want to make sure that we understand the whole problem. And for the whole problem, we can present a whole solution. So when we present that solution design, you know, if there's a bill of material workflow with CAD and that kind of thing, that would be where CADTALK comes into play, right? So when we design that solution, when we demo that solution, a good sales process gives a good sales to service handover, and implementation goes much more smoothly. And that is really what we're trying to do, is just be smooth through the process. Smooth is fast, right? So if we can do the right discovery, the right solution design, the right demonstrations, and match that up with the right, you know, all clients have budget and there's fit and ICP and all that other kind of stuff. All those things are in line. The implementation goes very well, and we have happy customers at the end. And for me, in my practice in WIA specifically, one of the reasons I like working at WIA is because one of our focuses is making sure that we have referenceable customers. So not just that we have customers, but that people want to talk good about us when we have another one, right? So we want clients to be delighted with the process, not just have a customer. So that is just a different idea about the way that we go about things at WIA, the way that I run my practice, and it has to be done that way in order for us to achieve our goals.
I love that. It's one of the reasons we love working with you all. What changes in the conversation for a customer so they see this bill of material workflow process, a solution presented, and a way to solve this presented up front? How does that change the conversation? Like, is there an aha moment? Is there a light bulb moment for the customer whenever you see that go well?
Yeah, so IFS is kind of you know, tier 1.5. We're not SAP, right? But like we're very robust. Okay, so like I don't want to you know, kind of put us in a box, if that makes sense. But for the right customer, we are the solution, right? And one of the reasons is because of the different types of BOMs that IFS supports. So when you're coming off of a legacy ERP system, or maybe you're looking at some of our competitors, right? You are maybe looking at, there's one type of bill of materials in that procurement process within that ERP. IFS supports multiple types. So that gets them thinking, aha, right? Now you tell them, not only do we do different kinds of BOMs, but I can make it that your design team can get you cost very quickly with supplier integration, because we have very good supplier management, we have very good procurement workflows, we have very good supply chain. All of that stuff together makes that a delightful experience, and it's a differentiator for us. And I like to think about things not necessarily in product terms, but in differentiation. So if I can differentiate in that way in a client that has those kinds of workflows, that is something that we definitely are honing in on, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's summed up here very well as we don't sell software, we solve problems. It's finding that right solution for whatever gets that engineering data working for your business. And to your point with IFS and with our other ERP partners, there's a reason that we work with the ERP partners we do with IFS, with you all. It's because they're very good solutions. It's not that, we're not here to, say, here's what's wrong with your solution. It's how can we make it better? How can we maximize everything you can get out of that wonderful solution that you have spent a lot of time and a lot of energy assessing and going through these conversations with. And that's why we do what we do. So Dylan, we'll bring you in here. Again, thank you for fighting through. If you didn't hear at the beginning, Dylan's fighting through a power outage, and so he's managed to get on some Wi-Fi. So we appreciate you fighting through that, Dylan. But let's kind of make this concrete from a CADTalk perspective. So take us through what happens today in a shop that hasn't solved this. So from that finalized CAD model in something like SolidWorks, for example, getting all the way, we use other CADs, but SolidWorks is a very common one, to someone keying it into IFS. What does it look like before CADTalk?
Yeah, so as you're kind of going through that design process and releasing out of engineering, you need to get that data into IFS to execute for the rest of the business to execute on, whether it's for purchase orders or shop orders to produce manufactured components. As you complete that design process, we now need to get all of these parts entered into IFS, whether there's revisions being made or new items in IFS. So you got to either manually enter all of those inventory parts, master parts, product structures, routing structures, all of that. There are some options where you can export that BOM out of SolidWorks to a spreadsheet and then use the kind of migration templates into IFS, where you would have to create multiple like templates for each of those items in IFS. But without using CADTalk, you have to do a lot of manual work to get IFS up to date and ready to execute for the rest of the business.
So with that, and Dylan, Tim, I leave this both to you to answer because we come at it from two different sides to some extent. We say here engineering becomes the bottleneck. Who ends up being that person in your experience, Tim, when you're talking with folks, and Dylan, when you're hearing it on our side, that ends up being that kind of bottleneck person in this situation?
Yeah, from my experience, sorry, Tim.
No, go ahead.
A lot of the times what I see are businesses will have like a kind of like data entry clerks that understand how all of these things need to be set up and configured in IFS, where engineering isn't always the owner of that data anymore. So they'll kind of throw it over the fence to that group because they understand what all of these settings need to be and how they react when like MRP runs through IFS, and how they need to be set up with, procurement information, routings, and all of that.
And for me, it's I always talk about construction specifically as a tale of two cities. There's the field and the back office, and there's another city though. There's a township within the back office, and that estimating and VDC and modeling and all that stuff. And they kind of live in their own world a little bit. And what can happen there is that when we're not connected in our data and our process, and we don't have a feedback loop, let's say, we don't know what we don't know. We're doing everything off of gut feel, and gut feel from experience is important. You do need experience in order to execute in the type of work that we're for the clients that we're generally talking to. It is important to have experience. It is important to know the business, and it is important to know how all these things relate to each other, right? But having the measurables, having the data, having it in one place and one source of truth, that is where a lot of workflows break down. So if engineering is kind of keeping everything to themselves, we don't really get into the, the visibility for short, long lead time items. So, well, how does this impact schedule and different things like that? How, we can't break ground till we have this material, or we have this piece, or the way that we've designed this, it has to be, we have to get a new supplier for this particular part because we've never built this thing before. Whatever the issue is, it's going to impact field, and anything that impacts the field schedule, budget, anything like that impacts the back office. So as long as everything's in one system, and we do have a way to query that data and pull that up the way that we need to in the permissioning sets and the access that we need, then we really start getting places. We really start understanding our business. And when we can do it fast, that's another thing that kind of just adds to that. So having all the data is one thing. Being able to use it is another thing. And that's what we're trying to solve for.
That phrase "single source of truth" comes up so many times when we are talking, no matter across industries, whether that is construction, whether that is manufacturing. We see that all the time, of businesses trying to find and develop that single source of truth. And I feel like that's one of the things that we do best with what we do with CADTALK, is developing and helping businesses find and execute on that single source of truth. Because after CADTALK, things look a bit different. Dylan, walk through this here, as well as kind of that ECO portion, when you're looking at engineering changes and that sort of thing, of what this looks like in the post CADTALK world.
Yeah, so you mentioned, the single source of truth and data flow and all of that. And so with utilizing CADTALK, we're able to eliminate those kind of departments that have to fully understand exactly what all of these part setups need to be, and how to do a part revision and phase in and phase out and all of that. By meeting with you to understand what your business processes are, and apply those inside of CADTALK through our rules there. So anyone can use CADTALK, because it's going to go through, upon that model being done, whether it's through the change process in engineering or a new release, all of those business process rules will be applied to be sure that those parts are set up correctly every time. So that's the biggest benefit to CADTALK, shortening that lead time from engineering to manufacturing handoff. And when we're talking construction, there's a lot more involved than just the manufacturing side of needing to purchase materials to have them show up to the production facility to make it, to then put it on site and install it. Working with the install crew and everything like that, being able to keep those schedules aligned, shortening that lead time to that handoff to the rest of the organization efficiently and effectively every time.
You said it very well, Dylan, because, as we look at that, you kind of talked through this a little bit. That's why I want to go ahead and jump to this, of why this kind of matters for ETO. We'll talk ETO a little bit now. We'll talk construction a little bit as well, because every job is different, with looking at the unique bills of materials, the customer deadlines, the lead times, depending on knowing that BOM now and not in 2 weeks, and then kind of looking at those benefits of that. So, Tim, what's the, you've touched on this already. What's the cost of waiting 2 weeks to know that BOM? What is that delay? Like, let's walk through that delay downstream, where that gets to.
Yeah, so in construction specifically, and manufacturing, every company is going to tell you their margins are tight, right? And everybody wants to maximize their margins, but construction is uniquely thin. And one of the things about margin in construction, it's not about the margin, it's about the cash flow. We need to know things, because the average construction company in the US has about 17 days of cash. So if it takes 2 weeks to get your information correct, that's a problem, right? We need to have correct information, making real-time decisions, because every day it changes. Every day there's something that comes up, whether it's a direct effort. I'm a specialty trade contractor and I do everything, versus maybe a general contractor and they have subcontractors, or maybe it's a mix of both. Those are the kinds of things where things change every day. Site conditions change every day. And it's something where we have to get this information in real time. If we're making changes to, let's say, mechanical systems or piping or whatever that might be, or we're building a part, steel, whatever the part is, this is the kind of thing where it's got to get real time. It's got to have its cost impact listed in real time, because in construction, there's a lot of pending things waiting approval, right? And there's multiple approval levels. And the quicker that we can identify a problem, an issue, a change, whatever that might be, and have a budget, revenue, and timeline impact defined, the better we can make decisions in real time and get that done. So this is the knock-on effect of what this does. Yes, it takes CAD and turns it into a bill of materials, but what does that really mean, right? Things change throughout a project, things change in manufacturing, and we have to be able to, components and machines in shops go down. These are the kinds of things where we have to be able to adjust to that, and to be able to have the inheritance, as we call it, from CAD through to a shop order, through to a project, tie it to a project, tie it to a work order, tie it to whatever that might be. We need to be able to tie it back and get that information and audit that information. So those are the things why it matters. There's a lot that knocks on from that, but it's not so simple as like we're turning CAD into a bill of materials. There's a lot that goes along with that as we move through projects and in execution.
Tim,
Yeah, and to your point.
Go ahead, Dylan, please.
To your point, Tim, when you're talking about construction specifically, it is kind of that ETO workflow with a much more complicated logistics workflow. There's so much that can tie into it with all the subcontractors and everything like that. But then you start thinking about, well, is it project completion billing, and like when can we bill for this material and all of that? And so the sooner that you have that information available, the sooner you can collect payment a lot of the times.
No, that's a great point, Dylan. And I was just going to say, Tim, the downstream effects and you laying that out so beautifully. I'm gonna bring you on to do some marketing for me. This is you lay it out very, very well. Just the understanding that whole downstream effect, because that is, I think that it is to think about the second and third order consequences of what this one piece of the puzzle creates. It is quite drastic, and it's a thing worthy to solve in that. And so with that, Dylan, you touched on this a little bit earlier about business rules and all of the things that are specific to your business. So whether it's, again, regardless of industry, manufacturing, construction, whatever it is, there is that, we'll call it tribal knowledge that lives within the business, that lives within what you're doing about the processes and how that works. So with that knowledge that lives in maybe someone's head, maybe on some sticky notes, or maybe it is a process that's in there, how does CADTALK fit into that piece of the puzzle, Dylan? And how does that, what we call this configurable rules engine, what does that mean?
Yeah, so I'll kind of give some background on how I ended up at CADTALK here, and this may shed some light on all of that. I worked as a manufacturing engineer for a little over a decade, with most of all that time at a unitized curtain wall company where we designed, manufactured, and installed. So similar to all the things that Tim's been talking about here. I had a different product to do that integration. And me as a manufacturing engineer that also got to run the implementation of Epicor where I got a little too intimate with ERPs, and I knew exactly how I wanted this data to come into there for it to be effective for everyone else in the company. And I couldn't get that tool that was sold to us with Epicor to do what I needed it to do. I found out about CADTALK, and the configurability that you have with CADTALK would solve all of the problems that I had, instead of having this off-the-shelf product that they then had to go customize to do what I wanted it to do, but it still always fell short. So I reached out to CADTALK to become a customer. We don't have an integration with Epicor, but we do with IFS. So I did the next best thing, and Jeff offered me a job, so I came to work with him.
So yeah,
But
it
that,
is. Go yeah. Expand on the. Well, one, very happy you're here. Two, how do you see this play out with businesses now with the configurability? Like, what does that look like on a day to day for a business? Like, go into an example of that that you saw.
yeah, so there are many different products already out there that do these integrations. They offer them at like a very basic integration, and then they will customize it for you. Where CADTALK is a platform product, we don't do any customizations. Any feature enhancement that we have to add is available to all of our customers whenever they want it. And we do that by having everything pre-built on both sides, but there's a transformation engine that lives in between, and that's kind of like the tool that is configurable to make all of those decisions that need to be made dependent on what type of part it is in CAD. It doesn't even have to have a CAD value to make these decisions. We can see all of the information already in IFS, see all of the information in CAD, and we talk to each other that way to be sure that the data gets transformed in the way that it is needed for your business to be successful.
And it's part of the reason that I would say, in hearing in talking about the complexity and the logistics of the construction world and in things with ETO as well, it's why CADTalk, I think we actually lean into those things and lean into that complexity, because with the configurability of the platform, there is the opportunity to address that complexity that exists, whereas other places it's not as easy to do. So I think CADTalk lives well in that complexity and functions well in that world of complexity.
Yeah, and I mean, our biggest philosophy for having it being configurable instead of customized is then we are always working to the latest versions of IFS and all of the CAD platforms as well. So if there's an update pushed for IFS, CADTalk will not go down due to that.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's great. I'm glad you brought that up. Tim, as you're looking at in that kind of discovery process, kind of three of these questions that might come up. You mentioned, we've talked about the ETO, we've talked a little bit about how the CAD data gets into the ERP today, and then some other critical factors. So what are the answers that when you see this, they're laid out a little bit on the screen here, but go into the answers that you see to these questions that say, hey, it's time to bring in something like CADTalk for this.
Yeah, I mean, these questions are very good. Are you doing engineering to orders? I had a client where they do a lot of make to stock, but they're doing about 15% ETO, but that 15% ETO, we go on the 80-20 rule, right? It's about 75% of their time. So on the stuff that they're doing make to stock, that's kind of, they have a demand from their sales team, they have a demand from their customers, and they can make more of those things if there is not availability for, and they can do that very quickly. When it becomes something that it's one-off and it becomes something that's, we don't do it all the time, it's not our core business model, but we are going to, do this one-off thing for a customer, and we're going to work with them, with our engineering group, to design what it is that they need, and we're going to build that thing. It becomes a nightmare to project what we're going to do in the manufacturing space and how we're going to ship that, when it's going to be there, and that kind of thing. So if we can take 80% of their manufacturing planning time and reduce that down to, I don't know, it's still going to be some, but is it 10%? Is the 15 to 15? Is that, can we make it easier for them to do that thing? And can they alleviate capacity, and can they have better visibility, and can they have, we want to validate what it is exactly in that, or, okay, you're doing ETO, CTO, or project-based. What is it that makes that difficult? What is it about the communication between your engineering team and your manufacturing team and your sales team and your all the different teams and your execution team and your logistics team and tell me about all of that, because this will help with that, right? So those are the kinds of things where we have to be able to, have that business conversation, understand the workflow, understand the process, because if we're going to talk in workflows and we're going to talk in the rules engine and things like that, we have to get clients thinking in process. And most clients do a pretty good job of knowing how they do things, but like to formalize that process, a lot of clients don't have it completely formalized. And you have to do that in discovery. And only once you understand how it is that they're doing it and helping them through that process to know where the deltas can be. We're not trying to change everything about what a client does. They're obviously got to the size and the success and the customers and everything like that already. How can I make it so that way it's more efficient? Not necessarily change the whole thing. I can't know that unless I know the process. So,
Right.
you know, just from that ETO, CTO project base, it really does bleed into a lot of that. And I like to know kind of how that all is affected in order for me to then have that differentiation, as I say, in our presentations and in our time to value and our you know, the pricing, the licensing, everything. It all ties into that.
Absolutely. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I am curious, you know, that third question, those 5 critical factors, looking at BOM accuracy or lead time or all those sorts of things. What typically comes up in those 5 critical factors, regardless of whether that's CADTALK involved or not? What do you see usually come up as some of those critical factors?
One of the things that's big in that, like those 5 critical factors, is most ERPs, because it's only one type of BOM, but I need to be able to kind of jigger the system to be able to say, I got these different parts that I'm ordering from different suppliers. So instead of having one master parts list, I have 16 different versions of the same part, right? We don't need to do that. We want a master parts list. So like if somebody says, I got, you know, we really need to clean up our data and our master parts before we could really take on a project like this. I'm like, well, this would be the opportunity to do that because I got something that can help you, right? And that's, you know, you don't want people to be scared of doing these big data projects. You want them to know that you're there for that reason. Like, I'm not there to avoid the complicated conversations. If it was easy, you'd find somebody else to help you with this, right? there's probably a cheaper ERP, and there's probably a, you know, there's a reason we're having a conversation, and I want to make sure that those critical factors about BOM accuracy, lead times, engineering throughput, customer satisfaction. Okay, so this is a big thing. Like, if we want to be able to take, I got to lock in a customer order at 8 weeks out because I just can't handle the changes at that point with my manufacturing group, right? Well, what if it could be 2? What if it could be 1? Would that allow your customer to be able to have a little bit greater flexibility? Because if your customers are construction companies, things change, as I said, right? So if you're building stuff for like building materials or something like that, your clients are constantly changing what is going on, and they need to be able to make revisions. And if you have a strategic partnership with your customers, like we aim to have, you want to be able to delight them, right? And part of that getting the accuracy of the BOM and the lead time and the engineering throughput and all that stuff, it really leads to that. There's a tangible, but there's also an intangible to it. And why are we changing ERP anyway, right? That's a big, we need that why. And that why leads to a lot of these conversations. And you can always bring the minutia of what we need to talk about in these things and bring it back up to the big picture. That's the, you know, a discovery. I want to know why. I want to know what it is that's the bottleneck. And I want to, everything that I can do to solve those problems, whether it's little or big, let's talk about it, right? And it's up to the client to say, this is the right solution for us or not after we show it to them. And that is just kind of the philosophy that we have.
No, it's fantastic. And I love the, you know, being able to find out that why, you know, is so important, because these are not, these are big decisions. And you know, we get that from, you know, with CADTALK, as we are often included on those new ERP deals. You know, we realize that that's a big decision. That's not something that gets made overnight. There's a lot of process that goes into that. And so being able to find out that why is so critical. So looking at just putting kind of tying a bow on this that we've talked about with this, because we've talked about some ETO manufacturing, we've talked about some construction here. Tim, where do you see these overlap for CADTALK? Where are they different? And how does CADTALK, in your experience, kind of speak to both sides of this?
I would say on that, see that PMRP under construction that you've got there, where you have
Yes.
CADTALK, that's the bridge. So if you make things for customers, so I don't know if it's steel, or if it's you know, heat exchangers, or if it's plenums for mechanical, or it's whatever you're doing, right? if you make something in a shop or on site, or you fabricate something, you make something to be installed at a customer site by design, this is where the CADTALK PMRP, if we're making something to a project, IFS is excellent at that. To be able to take the shop order and tie it to the project, to take a work order for service and tie that to the project, so we can get, you know, complete visibility of what's going on here. And we can also say these materials were required to build this part, which these sub-assemblies made this finished good, which then once the finished good is assembled, then I can dispatch a service team to go install it, which then this is part of a bigger project because I got an SLA with these guys, right? And we've got this whole thing needs to be like, and at the end of the year, I'm going to have a conversation with the customer. We're going to have to redo rates and all that other kind of stuff. We want to be able to come back to that. We want to be able to audit back into that, right? And if we're delivering in that way, and we're vertically integrated, as they say, in a customer, then that is where this has to we have to have this conversation. This can't be had after the fact, because it is something that nobody who sells ERP software, especially net new, wants to bring in complexity. They don't want to bring in ISVs. They don't want to bring in something that adds cost. They don't want to bring in something that adds a different professional services and a different contract and a different, you know, we don't want to do that. But if at the same time the solution requires it, you have to bring it in. You have to talk about it. So to avoid the conversation is to you find out the holes in implementation. So like I sit on steering committees after we sell a deal, I sit on the steering committee, and like we find the holes. Like our team finds the holes in the solution architecture. And if to have a sales conversation about something where a client thinks they already bought something and they already have everything that they need, and you're like, well, actually, for this process that you had, it's like, why didn't that come up in discovery? I don't like having that conversation, so I just have it in discovery. You know, that's the only way that I can describe it. But like these ETO manufacturing, more and more construction companies are becoming vertically integrated, and especially at the big side, this push with data centers, this stuff with solar and all the other stuff that comes with that. It requires new ways of thinking and new ways of doing things. And because that supply chain and that type of project doesn't necessarily exist, it didn't in the past. We need to now. I sat on an ENR webinar where there was some of the big GCs are now really investing in their own self-performed trades to make sure that they're executing, because the timelines and the pressure and the penalties for not finishing on time are so great that they have to now do things a little bit differently, and they have to take control of a couple things while also managing subcontractors, materials, suppliers, manufacturing, all that kind of stuff that goes into that. And if Google wants a specific racking system for their servers, and they're going to put you in charge of that, and in order for you to get that job, you need to be able to do that. Well, then, I guess we should have something like CADTALK so we can make changes as they make changes, right? That's the concept. Okay, so like those are the things where, depending on the problem and how big the problem is, that is the kind of conversation that we want to have. Solve problems, see where this fits. I'm not trying to sell CADTALK into somebody where it's not a fit, right? So but where it is a fit, we need to make sure that they understand all of the knock-on effects, the second and third tier decision processes that happen because of that. So this is where we see the sweet spot of IFS for construction and engineering is where ETO meets construction. So where you guys are in that Venn diagram, that's the sweet spot for us.
And it is, kind of, you've alluded to this, but with the growth of AI, with all of these things that come in, there is so much more expectation of readiness to data. There is so much more expectation around just time to completing things. And so to your point, having those delays, not having that access to data, that's always been something that CADTALK spoke to and CADTALK was able to help with. But I think we're seeing the desire and importance of that as we are firmly in kind of an AI age and beginning to shift into that more strongly. There is, whether you're using that or not, there's an expectation and a shaping of the way of thinking that's occurring across a lot of industries that really speaks to that vertical integration that you're talking about, and being able to solve those problems, not just solve the problems, but solve them quickly and solve them as accurately as possible. And I think CADTalk really sits well in that conversation, is able to provide a lot of that into the room. So wrapping up and tying a bow on this, the simple framework is understanding that problem. So does that engineering workflow create a bottleneck between CAD and production? You bring the right people in that discovery process. If yes, CADTalk's in that discovery, not the follow-up. And then we're able to solve that together and make that ERP investment actually deliver, make that IFS investment deliver. And so it's one solution, not two separate sales. We're not bolted on at the end of the conversation. We're in the room from the beginning and able to solve that problem together. And that's really what we are in the business of doing. So as we come to a conclusion of our conversation here, want to be able to give you what you're taking home. So as a follow-up from this, we'll have just a very simple self-assessment for CAD to IFS. So a few questions and a little scoring guide to identify whether you might need CADTalk from the start, whether you're evaluating IFS now. Maybe you have already done that IFS implementation and you are, looking to do that. I mean, that happens. Like, we get that. Not everyone has it always put together as Tim with this. So we love that partnership. But if you are evaluating that and you're evaluating IFS, it's a way to do that self-assessment. And then also looking at what that if you're in that ETO world, what that workflow checklist looks like, what a clean pipeline looks like, and kind of a self-audit process there. So those two things for everyone who's registered. We'll have a follow-up email that'll have the recording of this for your reference, have those couple of resources as well, and then a couple of ways to be able to get in touch with us, being able to talk to Tim here at WIA or any of the other WIA team, talk to us as well if you're looking to hear more about CADTalk. So do want to open things up now too. Thank you all for your time. Thank you, Tim and Dylan, for a fantastic presentation. Really appreciate you all jumping in on this. We'll wait for questions to come in, but I will open it up to you now as we wait for those, Tim and Dylan. Any final thoughts of anything we haven't covered that you think would be really good for the audience to be able to hear?
I just wanted to say I really appreciate being here. This is a good conversation. I really do like solving problems more so than selling software. So if we can work together to sell, to get you the right product, not just sell you an application. This is what we're trying to do, and we see CADTalk as a valuable component of our solution that we sell. And WIA does more than just construction. We do aerospace and defense, manufacturing, anything with IFS. They have their specific verticals. So that is one thing that I just wanted to make sure that we were, close on that thought. We really do appreciate it, and it's been a good conversation here.
Yeah, appreciate that, Tim. And as you mentioned, I'm not here to work for a software company. I'm here to solve the problem. That's why I came here. I lived the problem, I hated the problem, and now I get to solve that for others.
And it is true to add on to that with what Tim said, with CADTalk and IFS in general, just as more generally as an ERP solution, we find that the alignment is very strong with that fit. So you mentioned aerospace and defense, Tim. That's somewhere where we have clients as well, and so it's the alignment and fit there for us. It's a really just a fantastic place to sit, and so we are very grateful to have units like WIA and IFS as partners, and so we're very, very grateful for that and enjoy that. So let's take a look here in the questions. Veronica, would you be able to share those questions with me? It looks like we do have a couple of questions coming in, but I am still looking for seeing those coming in. So it looks like we do have a couple of questions. So here we go. Question from one of our attendees. I'll read this out here. So lots of our products are stretch and pull. They can be ordered from 4 inches to 140 inches in small increments. With that being said, on a manufacturing standpoint, it's fairly the same besides runtimes and physical part size. Can CADTalk help with copying down a standard template, then use that as a starting point for the new parts and runtimes to be inputted into IFS using CADTalk? Dylan, did you get all that? And is that something you can speak to?
Yes. If you had the inputs for what those increments would be for the different lengths, that would be something that we could work together on.
Okay. And then another question: to add the CAD is currently automated and bypasses engineering. The customer order passes information down to automation and sends it down output to our CNC programmers. Looks like that was a comment that somebody had put in here as well. So we'll leave that as any other questions come in here. Wanted to make sure that we, okay, so that looks like that was an addition to that comment as well. So, but yeah, if you have those specific questions about, getting the technicalities of, hey, how is this going to work for my specific process? Because there is, like, it's why we have a configurable rules engine, because there are always those specific processes to each business and how we do things. We'd love to be able to have that conversation, and that's something that we certainly welcome, you having a conversation with our team to how we can help with that. So, all right. Well, I think we've left our time for questions here. Looks like we don't have anything else. Again, we'll have follow-up coming out, recording of this, a couple of resources for you, contacts for everyone involved here. Tim and Dylan, really appreciate your time. Thank you for a fantastic conversation, and look forward to more in the future and continuing to solve problems together.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.